what does it mean to be a fun movie? We've touched on this in recent videos, but I wanted to focus on it a bit more. And lo and behold, the perfect opportunity came up with the release of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead.
I want to see it work.
Where's the subject?
I want to see it work on a person. I want to see a negative before I provide you with a positive.
And afterwards, I'll be comparing it to another film released earlier this year, one that did a better job. But before we begin, I must admit that I'm not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder's style, his cinematic vision, if you will. And I'm not saying he's not a master of his craft, because he does know what he's doing. I'm just not a fan of his work. But do you know who I am a fan of? Well, it's Alpaca Thunder, that's who. Hey, that's me. A shameless plug, you say? I can't disagree with you there. But if you haven't done so already, then maybe think about giving us a like and subscribe. It really means a lot to have you guys along for the ride. So if you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? To begin, we'll first have to set some ground rules of what it means to be a fun movie. Well, in my opinion, as this is a purely subjective take, there are two fundamental points. 1. The movie must be within or around 2 hours, and 2. The movie must be easily digestible. You got that? Perfect. With these two rules in hand, let's see how they apply to Army of the Dead. Is Army of the Dead within or around 2 hours?
No!
Clocking in at 148 minutes, it's not what you would consider a quick watch. Sure, when compared to Justice League, it's but a short story. Baby. It's nevertheless a bit too long for me to give it any leeway. You may be asking why I haven't given this a hard 2-hour cutoff, and the first reason behind that is the end credits. They count towards the movie's total runtime, and I didn't want this to have any impact in this analysis. The second reason is that the spirit of this rule is to eliminate your long epics. I'm talking about your Lord of the Rings, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, and yes, the aforementioned Justice League. Is Army of the Dead easily digestible? It begins on the wrong foot, with a very long opening sequence that overstays its welcome. And you'll note that this becomes a common theme in the movie. And then we are offered an opening credits montage sequence that seems to imply a light-hearted take on the zombie genre. After that, the pacing of this movie is again bogged down by what feels like an incredibly long opening act that has Scott Ward, played by Dave Bautista, putting together a Danny Ocean's-like team. And yes, at its core, this is a heist movie. But unlike Ocean's 11, which is snappy and fun, Army of the Dead's opening act feels like a lumbering corpse, pun intended. Curiously, when I sat down to look at the timestamps, I found that both movies have similar lengths of time dedicated to this act. So then, what's the difference? Well, while Ocean's 11 chooses to focus its time in fleshing out what makes each member of the team a unique asset, Army of the Dead selection committee is over before you even know it, with the majority of this act dedicated to convince us why we should care for Scott's strained relationship with his daughter, played by Ella Purnell. As a result, I feel the movie suffers from an identity crisis, stuck between two worlds. One attempting to create some gravitas akin to stories told in 28 Days Later, Children of Men, or The Last of Us. While on the other shoulder, we are given some sweet promises of a fun ride. Now, a good fun movie will still have its poignant moments that allows us to find some commonality with the characters. But treading this line is hard. One can easily find themselves straying too far off the path, like Army of the Dead. This movie also suffers from having a second narrative, one that focuses on the alpha zombies. It's shot in the perspective of their king, yeah, there's a king, but this only serves to bog down the movie even further. In splitting time between both camps, it never really manages to hit home with either narrative, and it accomplishes nothing more than a bloated runtime. Now this leads me to my final and secret bonus point, a culmination of these two rules and the real question I was trying to answer all along. can this movie be enjoyed on a Saturday afternoon with the family? Think about it. Pop in any of these films, and think of it. And you'll see that each and every one of these fits the criteria we established at the start. What I'm trying to highlight here is that somewhere along the line, the art of creating these fun and easy to digest blockbusters was lost. Generally, there are still some releases, for example from MCU offerings like Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnarok, but by and large, blockbusters these days tend to become these larger-than-life events that don't typically lend themselves to carefree viewings with the family. Also note, I avoided including animated films such as those from Pixar because they're already made to be enjoyed by all ages. The point of this exercise is to keep the focus on live action. But let's move away from all this negative talk. And there's the movie I alluded to earlier. Ooh, how fortuitous. A recent offering that best exemplifies the essence of what makes the perfect Saturday afternoon movie. Released on October 16, 2020 in the US and internationally via Netflix on April 14, 2021, Love and Monsters is a post-apocalyptic adventure film starring Dylan O'Brien, who plays Joel Dawson, a 20-something-year-old guy who was separated from his girlfriend Amy, played by Jessica Henwick, during the evacuation of the city. Joel vowed to find her, and the movie starts 8 years after the events of the end of the world. At its core, the movie is a lighthearted take on a genre with just enough comedy, naivety, and soul in its leading character to endear him to both a younger audience who can more closely relate with the actions taken, and an older, more cynical one. It's nailing this balance that makes it tricky, and tilting too far on either end may lose you the whole room. But let's be fair, we'll run Love and Monsters through the same 2 rules to confirm if it's kosher. Is Love and Monsters under 2 hours? Clocking in at 109 minutes, it easily makes the mark, so 1 point for Gryffindor. Is it a digestible story? Now, I admit this point is a lot more subjective, but I do believe Love and Monsters also gets us right. I highly recommend you give this movie a watch, so without getting into any spoilers. The story is very straightforward. Joel wants to find Amy while proving he's not a liability. And the plot largely sticks to this while also providing enough nuance in its narrative to deconstruct Joel, so that it can build him back up to become the protagonist the story needs. And at the end of the day, having both younger and older audiences benefiting from a genuine attempt at building a relatable character is exactly what you need to call a movie digestible. All parties come out of it feeling content, positive, generally in a good mood. We've come to it at last, confirming that Love and Monsters is the perfect flick one can watch with their family on a Saturday afternoon. I watched it on my own on a Tuesday evening. What does that say about me? That I'm a movie connoisseur. A film croissant. Haha. Yes. What's that? What's happening?
They're eating her!
Oh gosh darn. Oh gosh darn. Oh baby. Oh baby. Oh baby.
And then they're going to eat me!
What's that? Oh my.